One of the biggest things I struggle with as a web and brand designer is coming up with a great color scheme that captures the exact mood and vibe of a client. I used to spend hours upon hours scrolling for all the different palette and color design sites looking for that perfect color scheme. This was a massive waste of time because I could just never make a decision on the right palette. That all ends today. Hi, my name is Dean, and in this video, I will be walking you through a custom gem that I built in Google Gemini that acts as my expert color coordinator. It generates comprehensive schemes based on a description, a brief, or even an input of an image.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing I want to do is we're in our color scheme coordinator gem here, and what I want to do is just get a regular random palette. So I'm actually going to generate an image of the swatches first, and then we'll go into details. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so it looks like it's giving me a description first. It might give me the palette as well. Just letting it go through the generation, but as we can go ahead and work on this. So what it gives us is it gives us a basic description of our palette, and it looks like we have an industrial and cool category, and it's called the Urban Flux palette. And if you look here, you'll see the title, the subtitle, as well as a description. And in the description, you should see the palette is ideally suited for architectural firms, structural engineer consultancies, urban tech startups, and premium outdoor gear brands. Now let's go ahead and look at what our colors look like in this palette. So for color one, we have a structural gray. It looks like that's the neutral primary structural element for the palette. We'll see that you have the lightest and the darkest, and then the three is the base color. And they are represented in a hex, RGB, HSL, HSB, as well as CSS. And let's move on. So for color two, we have an atmospheric blue, which is a muted blue with gray undertones. It looks like it's probably going to go for a like a secondary color. Yeah, main call to action. So that would be like secondary or professional graphical accents. That could be more of the secondary color. And again, we have that table structure. And then for color three, we have a muted warm oxidated copper red. This is the accent color. It'll stand out more with the other two colors, and it's really good for call to actions where you really want to draw the eye's attention to. So that would be great to guide the eye to like a buy now or learn more type button. And then for color four, we have a raw concrete. That could be our light background. Yep, so this could be a clean background for a light mode, and then the later text for a dark background. And then finally, we have a deep slate, which is the a very dark cool gray. It's not a pure black, and it uses we can use this for the main topography in contrast to our light mode color, and then vice versa. We can use that for a dark mode background as well. Now, oh, this is interesting. I did not get the CSV. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I just put it in my test and it put the CSV first, but in this case, it put the W3C design token. So let's go ahead and talk about this a bit. So, what the W3C design tokens is, it's a standardization that the World Wide Web Consortium came up with to exchange design token data between platforms where designers can create their design tokens, import it into a JSON file in this format, and then that JSON file can be used to be exported into other platforms such as Figma or Sketch, or I'm not sure what platforms have adopted the design token standard yet, but I know there's a growing list, and probably by the time you're listening to this video, there's probably a pretty good uh, standardization among multiple platforms that are using this design token standard. So this just takes the palette that we just looked over and it puts it into a JSON format. And you'll notice that the base color, we have a description here, and then it's got the hex color. And then now we just do that for all our five stop colors. So there's like 25 of these altogether. I will be doing a video on how to import this JSON file into Figma. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll get notifications for when that is done. I'll be probably recording that as soon as I'm done recording this. So that should be released pretty close together. But again, subscribe to the channel and you'll get the video on how I not only do this, but also in this next part, we talk about CSV output, which stands for comma separated values. I'll be including on how to import this data as well. So basically what the CSV output does is it takes all the color information that we did for all our palette information for of actually 25 colors in all. So you got 5 colors with a 5-step chromatic scale. It'll take the color information for all 25 of those colors, right? 5, 5, 25, yeah. So we got 25 colors here in comma separated value output. We can take this output, import it into Google Sheets as a CSV file, and it'll, create a spreadsheet based off this data. Now, with that spreadsheet, what we can do is we can take a plugin in Figma that can read the Google Sheets and import it. If we say we have a color palette we want to represent on the screen, we can create repetitive like cards to represent each color with the color information. And what we can do is we can use the Google Sheets sync plugin for Figma and export the Google Sheets data, and it will populate each one of those cards with the appropriate title. Again, I'll be doing a video on how to do all this after I record this video. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll get an update when that video is done. Let's move on. So here we go with our color palette. So it did create details and then the color palette. In my early testing of this, it wasn't generating the palette automatically. I had to tell it to do it. But I think now once you use this, your AI gets an idea of your workflow on using this, and it kind of automatically, puts it in because I've been pretty much regularly asking for it in pretty much all of my prompts. So that's a cool case of how AI learned my, input history, and it started adjusting its response based on earlier input. Now let's go ahead and see what this palette would actually look like in a real world kind of mock-up. And we don't have to go into Figma and sketch it out all. We can actually generate just an image of what a sample mock-up would look like. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and generate using Nano Banana. Okay, so I just asked it to generate an image of a mockup in light mode. I don't know if it did it correctly because I wanted to do a landing page. Let's see what it comes up with. It did give a little, looks like it's actually going to create an interface. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I don't really like this. I really wanted to actually see more of a on-screen kind of layout. So let's go ahead and retype that. Let's try that. Even though that earlier image that probably would look good for like a product page or something. But let's see what it generates. So again, this is another example of how AI learned as I was typing these interfaces during my test. I did a lot of different prompts, so it kind of learned my workflow, and it gave a description before it generates an image. So yeah, this is much better. This is a pretty good representation of what the color palette would look like in a website. Looks pretty clean. It's got that modern architectural, industrial kind of look to it. Uses the grays, the blues. Looks like there's a darker context here, a lighter context. Looks like there's a lot of shading with that blue text. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. We got the red accent, that copperish accent color, where it does draw the eyes. I look at this, but really the first thing you kind of see is the contact us and even the social media um, icons. So that's a good way to draw the eye exactly what you want the user to do. In this case, contact us. So good way to convert. All right, so let's go ahead and see what this looks like in the doc mode. So it's loaded Nano Bananas. Doesn't look like it's gonna give a description for which is really not important because in this case, I just want to see the image, but it's weird because it gave description for everything else and it's not gonna give the description here, but it, yeah, I kind of gave it on a laptop, which is okay. I really want to see what it looked like in dock mode. And yeah, this looks actually pretty good. Um, see more of the accent colors to draw the eye. Request, our portfolio, request consultation. This lets me know that there's more here, like a slideshow. So this is a really cool palette for this industrial kind of looks like an architectural type firm. So there's a cool palette that could be useful for that. So yeah, so that is how we generate a color. And this was just basically all I did here was just say, please give me a random. I didn't give it any context or anything. Say, please random color swatches or random palette. And it generated not only the image, but it gave me all the details for the palette, which I'll be going over the instructions on how I generated those, this detail or this response to be formatted that way. I'll be going over those instructions in a little bit. So let's go ahead. And so that was just for a regular random. But say we want to add a little more context to it. So let's go ahead and add, kind of a description of really what we want, maybe some demographic information. So let's go ahead and start with that. What do I want to do for a business? Let's go with a dog room, and I'm going to do fun and vibrant. Actually, you know something? Let's make this a mobile dog groomer. Okay, so let's make this a mobile dog groomer, and mm, yeah, I think that's good. So we say, please generate color swatches for a color palette for a mobile dog groomer. I would like a fun and vibrant palette that shows the playful nature of our its core demographics are mid-age professionals who do not have a bunch of time to go to a pet groomer. Possibly the ages. All right, so I'll just add 20 to 50 for age range. And let's see what we get. So again, it looks okay. So it does create the palette first, which is cool that AI is actually learning this as I've been like, prompting it quite a bit lately, or quite a bit up to this point. So it kind of learned from my prompts and it changed the response based on, previous prompts that I put in. So that's really the one of the power plays of AI is, it'll change its response the more you use it. It kind of learns from you. All right, so this is Zoomies and Gloomies. That's actually a pretty good name for a business too. So fun and vibrant, ages 20. It's just demographic data. And we have our title, we have our subtitle, and it should give us a ideally suited for mobile vehicle wrap, cohesive social media branding, user-friendly digital booking. So we have the color one is a poodle pink, could be the primary signature color. And again, we have our swatch 5-step chromatic. Next up, we have a playful pop orange, which is an orange. That's the secondary color. And then we have our color 3, which is the cyan, which is a cool cyan. That could be a accent color. But it says it serves as the primary ground for your visual interface. We'll have to look at the color palette, but I think this could be, primary, and then the orange is probably the accent, and the first color was the secondary. So the natural bark or neutral bark is a warm brown, soft warm brown. So this looks like it could be a dark color. So yes, that's for the topography. And then this final color, this should be our base color up short, like a clean suds white, which should be a soft neutral, light neutral gray. And yeah, even the lightest is that pure white. So let's see what the palette looks like. Looks good. I'm not sure if this brown would work really good. You might have to darken that up. In fact, let's go ahead and show how we can actually edit this. What did I call that? Or what did they call that primary color? Clean suds white. All right, so I just asked it to change that color to be a darker brown that would contrast well with the clean suds white, because that'll be actually what we'd probably be putting it, but most. All right, so now it revises it. All this stays the same, and it's a dark bark, which is a darker, and it looks like it did not generate the image of the swatches. So let's just go ahead and add that. Oh, I spelled generated totally wrong, but it should know what I'm saying. It's pretty good at understanding typos with intent. Okay, yeah, so that works. That works pretty good. That will contrast well. So next up, let's go ahead and see a mock-up. Okay, so that is in light mode. That looks really good. A lot of contrast with the bright. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see that in dark mode. I don't think we need to put for this palette. It already knows that we're working on this palette, so it should know that I want a landing page for this palette. And there you go. So it does, that looks good in dark mode and light mode. So pretty good, pretty cool. Yeah, so that is how we get a palette based on a description. But what if you didn't have any type of description to go by, or you just didn't really know? You just have an image that you want to, take inspiration from, or maybe the client doesn't really know what they want for colors, but they have a really nice interior design, nice decor in their public space, that either their shop or the restaurant, the dining room, a public face space where they do their business, and they want to use that for their color palette. So they would either hand you a set of images for that place, or you go and take images, or even if they have a logo that they want to use, you can take those images and add them in and get a palette based off that image. And that's what we're going to take a look at next. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to use a logo that I created for my online store on Etsy called the Chuckle Canvas. It's a store I set up to sell print-on-demand products on T-shirts. I'm actually looking to expand it using more of an independent standalone website rather than relying on e-commerce. So I want to kind of expand on that, and in order to do that, I want to create a whole new color scheme for the shop. But you can go ahead and check it out, thechucklecanvas.com. And I'll be probably expanding that in the next, you know, when I find time, hopefully in the near future, I'll be working on an expansion of that store. But anyway, to get started, let's go ahead and upload a file. Let me just go over here and get it. Okay, so here's our logo. We can take a look at it. So this is the logo I have right now. Kind of simple, picture of a cat wearing headphones, sunglasses, as well as the font. I mean, the font's probably going to change, but This is the basis I want to go with. So let's go ahead and yeah, you can get a palette without any context. Let's try that and see what we come up with. So we just put the picture in with no context. It's gonna understand that it's looking for a color palette based on a logo or an image. So it gives a little background and gives a title, then a subtitle, and then it did the I don't want to render the table for you. That's okay. We already seen what that looks like. That's fine. So we have a deep vinyl, which is a dark navy. That's going to be the pulled from the headphones. That could be our brand color. Then our sage lens is our green, which is taken from the shades. And then we have a studio gray, which is a gray that is good for its fur. We can use that as a background. And then we have an inkwell, which is an off black. So that could be used for, I believe that could be used in a topography. And then we have our canvas white, which is negative space. So we could probably use that as a divider. So we have the gray background. We could probably have the white as container backgrounds. And then we have our CSV output as well as our design token. So the color palette is pretty much made up just on the premise that we just put in the image, no context, and it created it for us, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and see what this palette would look like. Okay, so here we have, it looks like we have our, so we could probably use this as a light background. That could be a dark background. There's a gray, and then the green from the shade, and then the blue. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So let's go ahead and put in a, generate a mockup, see what the mockup looks like. That looks okay. Yeah, kind of like that. Uh, let's see how we have the gray in our containers, and then our white, a lighter color. So definitely defines it fine. Yeah, I kind of like that. But we can also go ahead and add some context. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure they instill, I want a light color, a dark color, and then primary, secondary, and accent color. But this looks fine. So maybe we'll do that for another example. I kind of like this. I might go with this moving forward. Yeah, so that's how we do it with the logo. Again, no context, just the logo here, which it seems that it took the logo, it took the words off, which is cool. Okay, that's fine. I like how it put the logo face in there. So that's a pretty good rendering for AI. All right, so let's try getting a picture. Let's open up. Let's try one more example. Let's go ahead and open up a new browser window. Chrome. Let's go to like Unsplash, I guess. Or we'll go Pixels. Yeah, Pixabay fine. And any image site would work. So let's go with photos, and I'm just gonna get a toy. Yeah, let's go with bookstore. All right, let's try and find a and any of these. Just it doesn't have to be a bookstore. I kind of like this. There's quite a few colors here. Let's go ahead and copy that image. Let's go ahead and go back into our Well, let's go ahead and let's get a whole new generator and let's go ahead and paste that in here. And this time around, I want to give it a little bit of context. So I want to kind of, help it along with some context. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is what I put. I said I have a boutique shop. The target demographic is females between 20 and 50. I'm looking for a fun and vibrant scheme. I would like a dark color, a light color, and a light color that can be used interchangeably as background topography. I would also like a primary color, secondary color, and accent color that would work well in both. I mean, typos aren't a big deal with AI, but I kind of like to correct them as I go. All right, so this is funny because it actually identified the picture as a warm and neutral. So it's like this is a sophisticated request. It features the image features a warm and natural architectural base, and we want a fun and vibrant. So it developed a radiant use palette. So let's see what this looks like. So let's see the subtitle, the description, uh, ideal for retail brands, lifestyle influences, and high-end digital storefronts. We have a midnight navy that could be used as a primary background for dark mode or topography. We have the alabaster white, which is our primary background for light mode. And then we have our electric magenta, which is our primary color. Then we have our cerulean azure, which is our secondary color. And then finally, we have our golden citron, which is our accent color. It's a gold, metallic leaning gold, used for badges, new arrival tags. And then we have a CSV export and our JSON. I want to see what the mockup page looks like before I even get a palette swatches. Let's see what the mockup looks like. That looks good. Kind of like that. Yeah, that looks really, really good. So let's see what that looks like in dark mode. Well, let's see what dark mode comes up with. All right, so that's dark mode. I mean, I probably would have maybe given this a little lighter, kind of separate it. But yeah, that looks okay. That looks pretty good. Yeah, so that's how the palette works with just that image. Just for laughs and giggles, let's see what the color swatches look like. I'm actually going to try and just say color swatches, see if it actually gives it per the instructions. Sometimes it doesn't give it exactly how like those squares aligned in a single row, even though I specify that in the instructions, which I will be showing you in a few minutes. Okay, so it did. So yeah, so here's our palette. So we got a dark color, a light color, And then we have our primary, secondary, and accent colors. Yeah, I'm not sure what they were trying to say here, but yeah, AI generation doesn't do too good with text. I don't know if they'll ever get there. They keep saying they get better and better, but you still have issues where um, I'm not sure if that's a different language or just I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so that's our color palette. So that's the second way that we can generate a color palette with this gem. Now, the third and final way before we go into our instructions is um, you could actually get lucky enough where you'll have a client that will give you a formal client brief, or you can create a good brief based on discovery call with the client. Either way, you can have a formal brief and have it generate a palette based on that brief. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the next section. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you before we go into the instructions on this gem is how we can create a color palette based on a formal client brief. A lot of times we can go into a client or meet with a client through a discovery call or in person, and we can come up with a formal client brief that we can use as a basis for our design work. And a lot of times these client briefs have keywords that could be helpful in us determining our styles and color palette and kind of the mood we want to go for as far as design and color palette. So let's go ahead and first we got to generate a client brief. And what we're going to do is we're just going to load up the Microsoft AI Copilot. This way here, I'm not in Gemini and contaminating my color palette gem. I want to have a whole separate AI chatbot, and that's going to be the Microsoft Copilot. And I'm just going to give it some context on, role playing a small business owner and giving me a sample client brief that I can use as a basis. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is basically what I said. I take on the role of a local small business owner who is looking for a brand and web redesign. I am a brand and web designer who helps local small businesses create unforgettable brand and web designs that stand out in today's internet-driven economy. I said, just please give me a client brief that I can use as a basis for my design work. Let's see what we get here. Okay, so we can see that we have, and it's funny because it shows the location is Jacksonville Beach, Ponte Verde area. This is actually because I live in the Jacksonville area. So it actually determined that location based on my location. Because I said I'm a local person, it gives that local tie-in. Your location might be different. So basically what I have here is I have shoreline repair and home services. There are home repair, light remodel, and handyman services. We do have a lot of handymans around here. 7 years in business. But what I want to do is I want to go through this and I want to see if I can't pull out any keywords and try and make a determination of what type of palette, what type of color palette that will be generated on this. So let's see, just some little background here. We're a word of mouth business, feels outdated. Want a brand present that reflects a web presence that reflects the professionalism and trust we bring to our clients. All right, so that's cool and industrial maybe. Let's see if there's anything else that clean, trustworthy, aligned with the coastal Northeast Florida. That seems to be more cool and industrial. Don't see anything there. See what we have here. Clean, modern, coastal inspired feel. I'm still seeing industrial. All right, warm neutrals and coastal blues. All right, this can kind of probably go into the soft and elegant, maybe. I just don't see how that would work with my home remodel business. We'll see. Yeah, so yeah, I'm kind of a toss up just because it said warm and neutrals. I think the palette is going to be either a soft and elegant or warm and cozy. Or it could be a cool and industrial. It's kind of like I'm not sure. This could be anything really. I see the word clean, modern, an awful lot, and then I also see coastal. So be interested. So let's go ahead and take. All I want to take is I want just our client brief. I don't want this additional. I can also create this, this, and this. We just want the beef of our client brief. So I'm just going to take all of this from the actual title and I'm going to copy that. Let's minimize our Microsoft Copilot. And I just want to paste this whole client brief into our chat window for our color scheme coordinator gem. And just hit submit without any other context. The client brief itself is going to be enough. So what did we get? Elegant and soft. Okay, so that was our category we got. I was kind of iffy on whether it was going to be elegant and soft or cool and industrial. Um, it's funny because it's put this with a coastal industrial twist. So that's pretty cool. It kind of does it in between there. So let's take a look at our palette that we got here. So Atlantic craft and shore, professional coastal reliability for shoreline repair. So our first color is a Atlantic navy. Uh, that's our anchor color for our primary. Then we have a sea glass teal that looks like an accent color. Call to action buttons, icons, and links. And we also have a golden sand, which is a neutral. That could be like a secondary color. And then we have a warm driftwood, which is a gray weatherwood and construction. Secondary. I'm trying to see where the background color is here. I'm not sure. Maybe this golden sand could be the background. And then this driftwood would be the secondary. I'd have to see what it looks like in a mock-up first. So, all right, so the cloud white is our light background. Is there any dark color here? All right, the navy could probably be our topography. So our navy could be our topography. The cloud white is our background, and driftwood would be the secondary, and then our sand is our accent, and then the teal would be our teal is our accent, and the golden sand could be our primary. Anyway, let's just go ahead and see what this looks like in a mock-up. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and see what this looks like. All right, that's actually pretty cool because it gives you all three perspectives here. That's the first time I've actually tested and showed the mock-up of all three viewports. Looks like you got a mobile here, a tablet, and then a desktop version. That actually looks pretty good. That's a pretty good palette for home repair site. That looks really good. Let's just see what this looks like in our dock mode. And there is our dock mode, which that looks good as well. Those colors contrast great with the blue. I really like this. This came out really good for a AI generated image of for this color scheme. That looks really good. And then finally, let's go ahead and look at our palette. All right, so let's see what our color swatches look like. And there's our color swatches. So yeah, this looks good. So that's how we get a whole color palette with our client brief that we just pasted in. You see it just generates description, title, subtitle, as our individual colors, our CSV output, as well as our JSON output, and then we can do a mockup, which it came out really good. So this palette would look really good for that type of business. So, we could use that in our design system by importing those fields. And so yeah, that's it. Those are the three ways. So we saw how we could actually do a color palette based on typing in general description of what we want. We also saw how we could create a color palette based on an image. In our case, it was a logo from my print on demand shop, Charcoal Canvas. And we also took a image from Pixabay and we put in and generated a color palette based on that image as well. We also gave it a little bit of context to help us along the way, but it did generate the palette based off the image plus our context. And then finally, we saw how we could take a formal client brief and pull in a color palette or generate a color palette based off that client brief. So in our next section, we're going to go ahead and look behind the covers on this, and I'll show you what I put into my gem instructions to get all this working. So that'll be in the next section. Okay, so now that we saw how we generate our actual color schemes from the three different ways we can generate them, from like a description, from an image, or a formal client brief, let's go ahead and take a look at behind the covers here and see how I got this to kind of all come together. So I'm going to go into edit my gem and what I'm really interested in showing is this instructions area. And for my instructions, I followed a very common prompt engineering framework called the RICE framework. And the RICE framework stands for role, instructions, context, constraints, and exceptions. And each one of those elements of the RICE framework is represented in here somewhere. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to kind of a role. We're going to say you are a color theory expert specializing in creating the perfectly aligned color palettes based on mood, tone, brand identity, or business type. You can analyze any client brief or description of a business, organization, or industry and develop a palette that accurately reflects their visual identity. Okay, that's the role. And then we have an instruction here. We have your primary role is to return a complete color palette based on the information provided in the initial prompt. And moving on, we have kind of an exception here. We have if the initial prompt does not provide enough detail to generate an accurate palette, you must ask the user for additional information before proceeding. This way that the person accidentally types in something they wanted to put into another chatbot, it'll come back and say, listen, I can't make a color palette out of this. Please give me some more information. Now, moving on, we have, I guess these would be more the context constraints type of uh, instructions. So we have you must provide a title, subtitle, and description for the palette structure. The palette must include 5 total colors. Each color must include a 5-step chromatic scale. Step 3 is always the base default color, and the steps should follow design standards for color palettes, which display the lightest color in step 1 and the darkest color in step 5. This is the common practice amongst colored palette generation. You always put the lighter color first and then the darker color last. Then we have a definition of the categories that we want to categorize our palettes at. And we have 4 main categories that we define here. So every palette must be assigned to one of the following categories. We have a cozy and warm, fun and vibrant, industrial and cool, and elegant and soft. These 4 categories can probably represent pretty much any business type or organization type out there or any mood or vibe that you're going with. So I wanted a way for the palettes to actually be categorized into 1 of 4 categories. This way there, when I create my palettes in my design system, I can have certain pages or screens categorized as cozy, warm, fun and vibrant, industrial and cool, elegant and soft. And then I can just take the palette that's, whatever category it's in, put it in the respective screen in Figma. Now we have some requirements for the output. We said after the palette title, subtitle, and description, list each of the 5 colors with the following information. We have a color name, a description for a use case and color, the 5 chromatic steps, 1 through 5. And for each chromatic step, we want to make sure we have the hex value, RGB, HSL, HSB, as well as the CSS property in the format of RGB, open parentheses, close parentheses with the values in between. Then when displaying the color stubs on the screen, we want to make sure that they are rendered in a table to make it easy to read. This is one of those things that AI, Gemini sometimes followed and sometimes did not follow. You saw in one example that it did not generate the table in rendered format. It gave me the actual markdown on screen, which didn't really help. I mean, I could have read it, but it's just hard to read. So usually when that happens, you just tell it, hey, you didn't render the table in table format. Please re-render. And it'll just go ahead and correct itself after apologizing profusely for it. Now we have some CSV output requirements because we have to generate a CSV file, but we have to make sure that they're very specific as far as the naming for the columns. The reason being is when we take the CSV and import it into Google Sheets, we'll need to take that Google Sheets and put it into the plugin to map them into Figma for the components, which I will be doing the video. I'll show you how that's done when I do that video. But we want to make sure that the spellings are exactly the same as what they show up on the Figma um, labels for your respective component that you're filling in. So we have palette title, subtitle, description name, color description, step name, swatch hex, and then hex RGB, HSL, HSB, CSS, as well as sub description. Then we want to display the complete CSV, do not truncate it. Again, this is something that Gemini sometimes followed and sometimes did not follow. So if it doesn't truncate, if it does truncate it, just say, listen, you truncated the CSV, please give me the full CSV. Gemini will say, oh, so sorry about that, and give you the full CSV. We have some formatting rules here where we have the palette description must explain the palette's mood and vibe, the business types best suited for the palette, and the step name must follow the following format. The color name dash 1 through 5, and it's going to be in a kebab case, which I have down here using lowercase kebab case. The swatch hex value must include the leading hash symbol. This allows Figma to tell that it's a color code that's going to be implemented into the color swatch. Again, I will be explaining this when I do that video on the importing of these CSV values into Figma. And then the hex, RGB, HSL, HSB, and CSS fields must be prefixed with, and then I give the labels of what they need to be prefixed with. And then finally, all values must be wrapped in quotes to ensure proper CSV import handling. There were some cases where the description that was generated had quotes in it, and that messed up the CSV import format. And I just made sure to wrap all the values in double quotes to prevent that from happening. And then now we have our design token standard, JSON creation where we give it some guidelines to follow when we create our JSON. We tell it that it needs to follow the WC3 design token standard for this color palette. We want to include all 5 step colors, but in step 3, we want to make sure we include a description tag that will hold the color description and use case for that particular color. And then we have a placeholder format or like a scaffolded of an example format what that JSON should follow. Now moving on, finally, I think this is the final piece. Here it is. That's the final piece. We have image generation. There were some times where I was asking it to create color swatches and it was just giving me kind of like random squares. And I wanted to kind of give it a standard. And I say image generation. When asked to provide an image of the color swatches for the palette, always provide squares of the base colors in the palette on a flat background and align the color swatches in a row horizontally. Again, this is actually something that usually gets followed by Gemini, but sometimes Gemini did do its own thing. And again, you just say, describe that you want it aligned in a row horizontally. Gemini will apologize and give you the swatches. So this is our actual instructions to get all this working. And I will be actually making a a GitHub document that will be publicly available so you can download it. I will be updating it as I make changes and it'll be updated on GitHub. So that'll be always updated. So you're sure to have the latest up to date version of this color palette, these instructions. And yeah, so that is our color scheme coordinator.
So, if you found this video helpful and informative, please feel free to give me a comment in the comment section. Your feedback is really helpful to me. It gives me the drive to do these videos moving forward. I just started this channel and I'm looking forward to producing more videos around branded web design, web development, and AI assisted coding. And your feedback is really helpful in giving me the drive to do that. Also, subscribe to the channel. This way you can get notifications for when new videos become available. And I should be doing a lot more videos in the near future. So stay tuned. Until then, cheers.